Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a live Digital Transformation Talks. And I've got a very special guest with me on screen, and then an even more special guest coming to join us here in a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about transformation in the insurance industry. Before we dive into the presentation, Michael, can you give everybody an introduction?
Yeah, thanks for joining us this morning, everybody. Michael Coyne, sales executive here at Navient. Work very closely with Emma and very closely in the insurance space, but no need to say sorry because we do have a very special guest joining today.
Well, good. I'm glad you're not mad at me for pumping Joe up, because it's always fun when we get to have a customer on with us. So before we dive into that, Michael and I, as promised in the description of the event, are going to touch on a couple of things here as we get going. And the first is going to be kind of talking through just a very high level definition of what digital transformation is and what it means in the insurance industry. Oh, and I just closed out of my presentation, which is fun when you're live. 1 second, everybody. Here we go. All right, I just stopped sharing the screen. That's the only problem. Back at it. All right. So we're going to start with that definition of what is digital transformation. If you follow me here on LinkedIn, you know this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Then I'm going to hand it off to Michael, and he's going to touch on a handful of different trends that we're seeing within the insurance industry. And then for the main event, we will bring on Joe Malecki from Utica National Insurance to talk with us a little bit about their digital transformation strategy. One last plug before we get into the details here is if you're joining us, come into the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Let us know if you've got questions. That's the whole fun part of being live while we're doing these kind of webinars, is that we have that interaction with people as we go along as well. So thank you again for joining us. Let us know who you are and where you're from, and we'll dive in from there. So as we take a look at the world of digital transformation and what that looks like for organizations, again, anybody that follows me here on LinkedIn knows that I'm really passionate about the fact that digital transformation is much bigger than just looking at technology and what types of tools you're implementing within your organization. And my definition, again, looks a little different than other people's because I like to pay attention to these components of really unlocking what are all of these different areas as a part of transformation more than just that technology. So digital transformation is about looking at your company's culture and really unlocking the ability to provide innovative solutions to your customers, really looking at how can you build a strategic initiative. And when I say that, I mean something that goes across the entire organization to enable your digitally savvy customers and employees. So, when we talk about digital transformation, we're often talking about being focused on enabling our customer interactions. And Michael is going to touch on this a little bit more and how that's taking shape within insurance, and making sure that our employees have a great working environment. But again, we get caught up in that idea of technology being the front and center of our term digital transformation. But what I feel like is really important to bring up and focus on when we talk about digital transformation is this idea that we are enabling all of these ideas by technology. And that's why we lead with that word digital. And so I'd like everybody to kind of take that and flip that in their mind to think through this idea of enabling your people and your customers with technology, and that being your main takeaway for what digital transformation really means. So with that, Michael, we're going to go ahead and look at some of those quick insurance trends. But before I hand it off to you, I do want to say that we've got a couple of folks that are joining us and brave in the chat and putting in where they're joining from. So we've got Nathan, and unfortunately, whoever this is, I can't see your name, but we've got Shannon. There we go. Hi, Shannon. In the comment. So we do have people joining us live. We love to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And with that, Michael, go ahead and start diving into what we've seen in those industry trends then.
Yeah, thank you for getting us started here. And to dive in on kind of the specific technology trends we're seeing, we're going to take a look today at the Reuters Insurance Insight Report from a survey they did from insurance leaders to get us some exclusive data to take a look at today. It's going to show us where these insurance organizations have been investing in different types of technology And to get us started here at the top of the list, you see analytics and AI being the highest, coming in at 54% of respondents saying that their organization's investing in this type of technology, helping these organizations to better understand their day-to-day operations and drive decisions that are going to help them to reduce costs, respond to different market demand, target new markets, and also improve their internal employee experience. We often do see a lot of organizations as well use AI and analytics to analyze where they want to bring in new technology and introduce new technology inside of their business by using tools like process mining and process intelligence to identify where they have an opportunity to bring in some of these other solutions. Continuing down, we see number 3 there at 49% cloud storage. Continuing to see a trend here in the insurance space from the report that we're looking at today, as well as internally at Navient with the insurance folks that we work with. Continue to see this trend of organizations moving towards that cloud first strategy. And seeing this not only in insurance, but across multiple different industries as well, healthcare, manufacturing, local government, whatever it might be. It seems like cloud storage is more of a win than an if at this point. Looking around at some of the other points you see here on the data set, you see a number of pieces of technology that are designed to improve customer experience, improve customer communication. 51% of organizations investing in digital portals. You also see payment technology on our list here and chatbots. So a lot of different technology that organizations in the insurance space are bringing in to make life easier for their customers and improve communication channels between the customer and the insurer. The main focus that we're going to have today, though, is specifically going to be right in the middle of the list here, looking at automation. So if you want to pop us one more slide over, please, Emma. On the Reuters report, we see that 49% of organizations that responded have already made a significant investment into automation technology. And there's another 39% that have not made the investment, but say that they're planning to. So what we see by these numbers is that a high level of organizations have made that move and invested in technology that helps automate some of the repetitive manual work taking place throughout the day. And those that have not invested are looking to find some opportunities where they're able to eliminate some of that repetitive manual work. We've seen organizations in insurance continuously throw staff at challenges and issues as they arise. And I'm sure some folks on this webinar today have kind of felt the pains of being harder and harder to find employees recently, people aging out of the workforce, or just challenges finding new employees as well. So that's why more organizations are looking to make an investment in automation technology and rely on automation tools to better handle some of these challenges that are coming up with technology rather than with more people. We have seen a common challenge, though, in this process for organizations identifying where they have an opportunity, and then once they identify that opportunity, what piece of technology they need to bring in to specifically handle that specific task or that specific challenge. So to help us kind of talk through where what technology is going to be the most impactful for what specific task, I want to talk through this brief slide here. So Navient, our team here at Navient partners with a number of different technology solution providers. And the reason we do that is so that we have a number of different tools in our tool belt that we're able to apply to different types of challenges as they come up, or different types of tasks depending on complexity. So looking here from the bottom up, starting with those tasks that are fairly simple, scan, storing, and retrieving documents and data, your best bet is going to be to rely on a content management system, something that's going to electronically store your critical information and make it easily accessible to your employees. Insurance was actually one of the first industries to bring in electronic document management. But the case today is that a lot of those old legacy platforms that were initially implemented are still out there, believe it or not. They're limiting some of these organizations that are still relying on their original system. So if that resonates with you, maybe it's time to look into a new content management system that can add a few more capabilities and make your team a little bit more dangerous with the content you're working with day in and day out. Continuing to move up the task complexity levels here. The next level up is looking at tasks that involve researching and gathering information across multiple different systems. For these type of tasks, you want to look and lean on solutions like robotic process automation and automated customer communication, things that are fairly simple tasks but are extremely repetitive, take up a lot of time for your employees throughout the day, and aren't necessarily the tasks that your staff are looking forward to doing day in and day out. So bringing in tools like RPA, automated customer communication management, natural language processing are going to help you to integrate and consolidate some of those disconnected systems and also remove some of those manual repetitive tasks throughout the day as well. And then the next step up here, looking at kind of a little bit more complex tasks that involve capturing documents, extracting critical information, and understanding different patterns that are happening throughout your organization. You're going to want to look at technology, including machine learning and artificial intelligence for these types of tasks. This type of technology is going to get you the closest to a real life human worker that's going to be coming onto your team This type of technology is able to understand, learn, and analyze information that's continuously coming into your organization. And what's really interesting is that just like a human or a new employee that you bring onto your team, these tools are going to continuously get better and better the longer that you have them in place.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second, Michael?
Go right ahead.
One thing that I would say too, especially going back to some of those stats that you brought up from that Reuters report, looking at where insurers are investing today, it's really important to recognize that none of these things are really like standalone solutions that will transform your whole organization. Going back, looking at AI, you're talking about that today or right now. Automation is often closely tied to what those tools are, or you're spotting opportunity with that AI. We're looking at how you can integrate your core business system with these tools that can help fill gaps, maybe bring in chatbots as a different way to interact with your customers. So all of those things that were on that list are really tightly integrated with one another. And that's where, going back to the very, very beginning, where we talked about this idea of digital transformation as a whole, it's really important to keep in mind that all of these tools play really nicely together. If you have modern solutions that allow for integration, they play really nicely together to, again, bring us back to that kind of central idea of enabling your people and your employees and your customers with technology.
Yeah, that's a great point. What you're really looking to do is create an ecosystem, and digital transformation is truly one of those tasks that's never going to have an end. Technology is going to continue to advance, and organizations are continually going to find new ways to bring it into their team to help empower their employees. Where we're at today, though, is a point where technology is still a long way from being able to do everything that's required to run a business. So as we get to the kind of the top, most complex tasks, needing to have customer interactions, you still do need to rely on some of your skilled workers to handle these type of more complex tasks. So that'll be a great segue, I think, to bring in one of these skilled workers. I think it's a good time for us to bring in Joe Malecki from Utica National Insurance. Here at Utica has handled adoption of new technology.
Hi, Joe. How are you? Welcome to the stage. Before we dive into the questions that we've got for you, Joe, can you give everybody an introduction in your own words?
Oh, sure. You mean who I am?
Who you are, yeah.
As you said, I'm Joe Malecki. I work for Utica National Insurance Group. I've been employed by them for 27 years. I've been in the IT business for, believe it or not, 41 years. Graduated in 1981. It didn't take much. I learned all the rudiments to programming as such, and some people might say we're dinosaurs, but as the technology started to come in, the nerd in me started to get very excited about it. And we could see that there was incredible opportunities if you could leverage tools that you had to do things that they maybe weren't intended to do. And I would say for people who have trouble understanding digital transformation, individuals even have gone through digital transformation, perhaps without even thinking about it. I would say, like to my mom, for example, who had no clue what AI is or analytics or anything like that. I said, you have a cell phone. It was before the cell phone, you had your dial-up phone. Now, look, now you've had a digital transformation to your cell phone. And how many times has that cell phone been replaced? And how many more apps have come onto that cell phone? And how much more can you do with that cell phone? So I guess the analogy is that digital transformation is not a destination. It's a evolutionary process that is non-ending, and it's going to keep going. And to the extent that we can do it manageable, people can handle these without getting all flipped out. One of the things that we see with people in general is their a reluctance to change to something new, or it may be out of fear that they don't think they'll be able to understand it. They may be fearful that, well, their job's in jeopardy, they're going to be replaced by a machine. But these really aren't necessarily true. And well, I don't want to get off on a tangent.
Well, I was going to say, you're already dropping wisdom just in the introduction.
I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. So again, anybody taking notes at home, the idea that digital transformation is an evolution is another thing that we talk a lot about at Navient. So put that one on the top of your page with your notes as well. But we do have a couple of planned questions for you too, Joe. So let's get to those so that we can talk a little bit more specifically about that evolution.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a great segue in where you see digital transformation kind of in your day-to-day life, you know, of maybe it's getting a new cell phone. Maybe it's Emma and I were talking before we got going here of making a switch to a Mac computer with different shortcuts on your keyboard. So everybody lives their own digital transformation day in and day out. But I want to hear a little bit more, Joe, specifically kind of about Utica's digital transformation and what your initiatives were and what your goals were when you started your digital transformation at Utica.
Sure. Well, as Emma pointed out, there's a difference between digitizing your documents for easy storage and retrieval and automation of what you're going to do with those documents and how they're going to be. We started with our digital transformation back in the early 90s. We started using a CRM around 1995. Back then, it was really in its infancy. And we knew we had to do it. We were running out of space. So we started out very slow. And then we brought on a program, Monbase, for example. And we were able to do certain things with it. But we soon found out that we could do a lot more with it. Now, at that time, we had people who were using only mainframe computers. They didn't even know how to operate a mouse. I mean, it was funny to watch. They didn't know how to hold the mouse, you know. But we watched them come through that, and it took some time. We really did have some people who were totally reluctant to even try to get on board with it. But all of that was a precursor to what was coming down the road. And I think once we got into a .NET type environment and computing became a little bit more mainstream, I think we had to. I think we saw it. Not only were we excited with the things that we could do, but we also knew that we had to do that in order to keep up with the competition. I mean, it was said way back when, like toward the end of the 90s, you know, if you don't have a web presence by now, you're out of the game. It's too late. Well, we know that's not true because we have new companies starting every day. They're able to do it. Fortunately, because of the size of our particular company, perhaps it was a little bit more manageable getting into a higher technology because we had a small enough group that we could manage relatively easily.
Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a second. So it took me a second. So Joe, one of the things that we talk a lot about too at Navient is, and especially as we're looking at these evolutions that go across, I mean, truthfully, decades, because there's not an endpoint and we're constantly moving and changing. Along the way, there's going to be bumps. There's going to be lessons that are learned and challenges that, I mean, you even mentioned the idea that you had employees that you had to build these brand new skill sets with as you were introducing these technologies. Can you share some of those lessons that you've learned or challenges that you guys have overcome throughout this process?
Sure. Well, I can tell you from a technical aspect. I mean, I'm not a C-level executive. I don't look at that big picture. I'm a developer. I'm an engineer. So I look at it from the back end of things. And one of the issues, one of the problems I can see or challenge, I would say, is that oftentimes when a business tells you what they want to do, they don't necessarily understand all of the background things. They're goal oriented. You know, by next September, we want to be doing X, and they'll have a project manager who just wants to get that accomplished. That's their sole objective. But from my perspective, on the back end of things, I think, but what's coming after that? What's coming next year? What's coming 5 years down the road? I mean, we looked at that Reuters classification where analytics and AI was on top with something like 54%, and you had chatbots and IoT sensors down toward the bottom. Well, I'll tell you, as AI and analytics get better, you're going to see chatbots perhaps jump on top of that. Right? Because they'll be able to take advantage of this AI. A lot of people they're not crazy about chatbots because they're not totally intuitive. They try to be human-like, but they're really not at this point. So with that in mind, as you're building things, you should be thinking about what's coming in the future and what potentially you can do right now that will position you well for 3, 4, 10 years down the road. So some of the things that we learned, for example, were when we're indexing documents, for example, we'll put keywords on them. These keywords are used to retrieve documents. Well, maybe you need some additional keywords. You know, perhaps you don't want to look at just the keywords that you're going to need to index those documents today, but how else, what other ways would you need to retrieve those documents? You know, if you're talking about insurance and we're talking about claims, for example, there are some insurance policies that are claims made or an insured period. And you may have you may have to defend a case for a company that you insured in the 1960s, perhaps a company that's long gone out of business. Well, you know, how are you going to retrieve that information? And when it was it stored simply with an account number because that's all you thought was important at the time? Or was it stored with, in terms of keywords, was it stored with certain keywords for coverages and things like that, that you could easily dig into those files and retrieve them? You know, I think of this as going back into your old warehouse and pulling off these dusty boxes full of documents and having to sift through them to try to find something that's important. You know, if somebody had thought about it early on, they would have stored the proper documents. Something else we need to consider is, are you going to need to retrieve this information 50 years down the road? I did a project for a district attorney's office, and they needed to be able to, the requirement was they need to be able to access this information for at least 50 years. And there's only one way to do that, flat files, because think about where we were 50 years ago. You know, think about how the technology's changed. You know, are you going to find a card reader someplace? You know, so you need to think about these things as you're moving forward. These are one of the biggest challenges we had. To summarize, the big challenge is between what the business wants and technologically what we need to be doing to be good stewards of all that data, because the business doesn't necessarily know that these are the things that are in your head. Another thing that I would mention is oftentimes in businesses we have silos, and we'll conduct a project with an end goal in mind that involves several different systems, but we don't necessarily take into consideration what happens if one of those systems fails. How can we regroup? How can we go back and fix the problem? When you're talking about high-speed data and you've got a problem that comes in your workflow, you know, one thing smashing up, you think of a car crash on a freeway. We have tens of thousands of documents that are trying to fly, and they're all backed up behind this one roadblock, this one thing that went bad. How are you going to recover? Is it going to take 2 weeks? Or is it going to take, you know, just a few days? You need to think about those methodologies up front. And again, business unit probably isn't going to consider that. IT people need to consider that.
It's really a good point to think of both sides of that coin, and also how some of the technology needs to be informing our business decisions as well. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, looking at back to the very, very, very first slide where I talked about that idea of a strategic initiative that kind of breaks down those silos and allows your organization to work towards that digital transformation goal as a whole, is even more important when we start talking about combating challenges and kind of taking a peek at some of that, because you need that cross-functional approach in order to be effective with that long-standing evolution.
That's right. And another thing I'd point out is, as Mike was saying, you know, the steps that we're seeing people, the various phases that you go through with your digital transformation. As you get higher, there's more expertise required. And I think that there are people in various organizations who might be a little bit scared by that, thinking, I don't have the tools. I don't have the technical tools to be able to compete or stay in my job. So that's a very real thing that you need to consider. You need to consider somebody may even try to cover for the fact that they don't understand something. So I think the important thing, for example, in my company, one of the most important things that we did was we took on this sense of one IT. You know, we've got programmers, developers, all sorts of people working around the company, but we work as one IT. So nobody is really to blame, you know, when something goes wrong. That's never the objective if we can't meet something. So we encourage people to talk. We encourage them to learn. We provide every opportunity we can to do so.
And more often than not, in life and in digital transformation, we see things not going exactly as they're planned. You know, sometimes you get into one of those car wrecks, you need to figure out a way to recovery. And Joe, you've heard us talk about it from your time working with Navient, but we aim to be more than a solutions provider, but to be a true partner and a guide to the organizations we work with. Could you talk us through a little bit just about a two-pronged question here? One, what the importance of having the right partner is on digital transformation, and then maybe just hit a little bit on two on what your experience with partnering with Navient has been like.
That's part one. It's an absolute necessity that you have a good partner to work with, because you don't know what you don't know, and your partner has knowledge of various products, and they get to understand you. You also don't have to worry about I hate to use the word fiefdoms within a company. You know, when people be protective of their particular department or whatnot. If you're working with a good company, they're kind of like neutral territory, and they can help to direct you someplace. And to the extent you can have a very knowledgeable person to work, or company to work with, it's going to be incredibly helpful to you going forward. I mean, Navient is a great example because we worked with another company that was actually acquired by Navient, and they did a great job for us. They really did. But all of a sudden, when we came to work with Navient, it was like these doors open, because they had so much training material available on their websites. They've got young, very engaged staff. There hasn't been one person at Navient that I've talked to that I've ever been put off from. You know, nobody's smarter than everybody else, and they definitely don't talk down to you. And it's a friendly, trustful relationship. So we know we've got something we need to accomplish or something we need to fix. We know we can talk to them, and it's almost like talking to a friend, somebody who you can trust, and you trust them to then perhaps go to a different company or to take it back to their teams, and they're going to talk to their teams, and there's trust between them and their teams. The whole ecosystem is very well balanced, and I've got to say, we couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Emma.
I'm muted, and I was just talking about how you're going to make us cry with us. Maybe that's the internet's way of telling me to get it together. Well, so we do have just a couple of minutes here, and we did get one question, and I responded in the comments as well, but I would love to get your viewpoint on this as well, Joe. But which methods are best for driving digital adoption in a short period of time with your team? So you mentioned teaching people how to use mouses and all the like. What have you found to be effective in that scenario? Small sprints that are easily attainable and measurable. You know, don't think that you need to have a perfect product or a perfect solution out of the gate. As things break, that's what teaches you how to do things better. If you put out a product that works, but it's only mediocre and it's not really broken any place, there you are. You've got a mediocre product. But if you put out little pieces and you get feedback and you're able to adjust as necessary, you're going to end up coming up with a much more solid product. And by product, I mean a workflow. It could be anything. It could be managing your HR department. It could be selling to customers. Mm-hmm. That small iterative approach is something that we found is really effective too, because it gives people time to interact with the change, get used to it, figure out how to kind of navigate their new reality. And in the chat, I also put a bit more on kind of change approaches and how important it is to keep your people involved in the process throughout that entire evolution as well. And some tips in that video of how to do that and how to engage with your team from a change management perspective there. And it really is like a corporate culture
as much as it is like an IT a business kind of a thing. We were actually fortunate with the COVID-19 pandemic that it forced us to work from home, but it also got everybody out of our home office. And while we were gone, our CEO and president, they very, very smartly completely redesigned our home office to now where you walk in, it's very, very futuristic. Everything is futuristic. And it's just set up like a very modern company now. And that changes people's mindsets. You know, the moment that they walk in, things are different, you know, and so they're more attuned to what we're trying to accomplish and probably better poised or less apprehensive about the changes that are coming.
Well, we did technically hit our time. So I want to take a moment, Joe, and thank you for joining us. And for anybody that's on the live stream, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Utica National's specific solution and partnership with Navient, throw a comment into the stream comments and say something like case study or me, or raise your hand. And our team will work on getting you a copy of the case study, or also we have a video of Joe talking more specifically about their solutions as well. But thank you very much, Joe, for taking the time to chat with us. It's sometimes a little intimidating being live. So also in the chat, give Joe a round of applause because we can't do that physically today. Michael, thank you for co-hosting with me, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.